Hello, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to Warships for our upgrade and commander build video on the Smith. And somehow I fell into a black hole and completely spaced about even doing a video on Saturday, and then Sunday was too busy. So Monday, you get an upgrade and commander build video. That should not take me 30 minutes to do because we're talking about the Tier 2 Smith Premium American Destroyer. If it takes me 30 minutes, you have permission to reach through the screen and slap me. But there's no reason that it should. I'm hoping within 15 minutes or less, in all honesty. So, that being said, what kind of destroyer is the Smith? Well, it's kind of funny to kind of talk about the low tier destroyers in the game because most of them, I mean, yeah, you've got some that are kind of a hybrid, a mix of torpedo destroyer and gunboat destroyer. And Smith honestly you could swing her either way because her torpedoes reload so fast. She does have decent guns. Like, I think she's probably a pretty good hybrid destroyer is what I would say for tier 2. But you don't tend to see quite those characteristics of like straight up gunboat destroyer or straight up torpedo destroyer until you get maybe towards the mid tiers as an example. But regardless, you have the Smith. So in terms of armor, well, we're talking about tier 2, so she's coated in 6 and 10 millimeter armor, so nothing shocking there. It is possible, of course, to have your guns or your torpedoes completely knocked out, so I should probably even show you those torpedoes. You have 3. You have one on either side, and then you have one that sits here on the back that can swing either to the port or starboard side. And as you see, even with the guns, which are 76.2 millimeter guns, they are quite exposed out on the ship. So it is easy to have them all knocked out or even permanently incapacitated if someone at the lower tiers is so lucky to do so. Now, in terms of her modules, with the current build I have thus far, we have 5 points to distribute, and we'll talk about it. We have a 3.3 second reload time on these guns, which in total you get 5 of, okay? Then they have a pretty rough 180 degree turn time. So even grease the gears isn't necessarily far-fetched on the commander, so to speak, which is typically on American destroyers. You have pretty good turret traverse, not quite maybe like the German or the Russian turret traverse times, but 18 seconds. Maximum HE shell damage, 1100, AP shell damage, 1100 there as well. Now, in terms of her hull, we have 8,000 hit points. That's also because we have Survivability Expert on the commander. Torpedoes, well, these are really fun torpedoes. This is why I think Smith is probably about the funnest tier 2 destroyer you can play in the game of World of Warships. You only have 3 of them, but they reload in 11 seconds. Now, if you fill the tubes to help with the torpedo reload time, you get it down to 9.9 second reload time for 3 torpedoes. So you're just basically spitting them out constantly, and it makes it really fun. On the downside is, these torpedoes are only 4.5 kilometers. So your ship concealment is 5 kilometers, meaning unless you're like really lucky and you're moving away as the ship's pushing into you, that's the only way you're going to get a stealth fire torpedoes off or catch someone out off guard from behind an island, or being in the smoke screen, right? They do maximum damage over 6,000, torpedo speed 54 knots, detectability range decent 0.9 kilometers, excuse me. Gun range is 6.6 kilometers. Pretty typical for low tier destroyers who don't have a lot of main battery gun range. You can build this out to being longer. I'll talk about the pros and cons of that with the commander. And then with propulsion, we have a little 10,000 horsepower engine, 28 knots. And so you take Sierra Mike flag, we can get that up to 29.4 knots. So typically I actually take this down at the lower tiers. Even though the maps aren't as big, it's just nice to have that additional speed. Now, in terms of the first slot, really the one you're going for is the main Armaments Mod 1. It really doesn't make sense to go for any of the other 3 potential upgrades here below. This reduces the risk of your main battery and torpedo tubes becoming incapacitated by negative 20%, and your main battery torpedo tube survivability plus 50%, and the repair time, if either should be incapacitated, negative 20%. You don't mess with Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1. Yes, you have AA defenses, but I mean, like, you're tier 2, and actually you shouldn't see any AA because of protected matchmaking. You only see as high as tier 3, and you don't start seeing CVs or submarines till tier 4, right? Currently, that's how it works in the game. Magazine modification 1, risk of a ship's magazine detonating, negative 70%. Just take the Juliet Charlie combat signal if you're playing in randoms. If you're playing co-op, you don't need to be taking that. Yes, you can still detonate, but, I mean, come on, it's co-op, it doesn't pay a lot. Damage control party Mard 1, that's just to make your DCP longer. With 5-second action time, cooldown time's 40 seconds, but it's not worth the coal investments. Like, you want to keep your guns and your torpedoes online because of having a 3.3-second reload time on the main battery, and right now 11-second reload time on the torpedoes. Now, in terms of our armaments, you have the high explosive and armor-piercing shells. The high explosive, they just do a 4% chance of causing fire on target. Now, if you really want to bump that up, we can get it up to 5%. Excuse me, that one shouldn't be there, but 5% is what you get it up to. They pin 13 millimeters, so if you're going up against cruisers, try to aim for the bow or the sterns of them. Otherwise, you're probably going to shatter a lot on the hull here at tier 2. 6.6 kilometer range and a 64 meter shell dispersion. Armor piercing, it is possible, I think, to Citadel some of the tier 2 cruisers, but you have to be pretty close, even maybe some of the tier 3 ones. Otherwise, you're going to be looking on cruisers, for example, to go for the nose of them if you don't penetrate their armor belt. But cruisers at tier 2 and 3 pretty much don't have an armor belt. It's just like the 13 millimeter or something like that. Torpedoes, as we just discussed, 11-second, 4.5 kilometer range, 6,000 damage, 54 knot speed, 0.9 kilometer. Again, with filled tubes on the commander, we can get them down to 9.9. And then we don't get depth charges, right? We don't have submarines at tier 2 or tier 3. And you don't see submarines until you're tier 5. Because then you're no longer in protected matchmaking. So submarines don't start till tier 6 currently in the game, unless Wargaming changes that, which I hope they don't. Damage control party, action time 5 seconds, cooldown time 40 seconds. You have an unlimited number of charges. You might consider taking November Foxtrot just to reduce the cooldown time on your consumables, so then you're getting down to 38. You get 3 smoke generators. This is a 30-second action time, so similar to other mid-tier, high-tier American destroyers. The smoke screen dispersion time isn't for the full 2 minutes, though. It's only for 106 seconds, and it takes a long time, cooldown time of 160 seconds. So actually, when you use the smoke generators, you're trying to be greedy with them and only use them when you really necessarily need to. Most games don't last long enough, in my opinion, at tier 2 to warrant taking Superintendent to give you a 4th smoke generator and a 4th engine boost. So Superintendent, not really worthy, but I just want to make mention of that while I'm thinking of it. And then you have the engine boost, which is a plus 8%, 120-second action time, 120-second cooldown time, number of consumables 3. Again, if we take November Foxtrot, we can get the 160 down to 152 seconds, and then 120 down to 114 seconds. Now, in terms of other combat signals that you might consider running here, well, I would take Hotel Yankee. I would want to increase my chances of causing flooding on an enemy ship, and then just make my smoke action time a little bit longer. Otherwise, there's no need to run really any of the other combat signals here. Now, in terms of the commander, let me start off with the 10-point bread and butter build that 95% of destroyers take here in the game, or maybe 90, and then we'll go from there. And probably 2 different directions you could go, 3 if we're being honest as a whole. But in terms of a 10-point build, I would recommend going through this line here. So that's going to be preventative maintenance, risk of modules becoming incapacitated, negative 30%, and then you get a little buff there on your survivability for your secondary battery, which you don't have, and also for your AA, which you do have, but you're not using. So just trying to keep your turrets, torpedoes, your steering gears, and engine, because you will have your engine and steering gears incapacitated regularly here at tier 2 with the Smith, so you definitely want to be able to run preventative maintenance. And with that being said, definitely take Last Stand for a 3-point commander. Ship remains partially able to sustain speed and maneuverability with engine and steering gears incapacitated, because again, they will be knocked out, but you don't want to completely lose your maneuverability and completely lose your engine speed, right? So take Last Stand. Survivability Expert plus 350 hit points for each ship tier. So that essentially means you're getting 700 additional hit points. Otherwise, we would be 7,300. Math, long day. So I recommend that. And then for 10-point build, go for Concealment Expert. That helps get your conceal down to 5 kilometers. Otherwise, I believe it's like 5.5 kilometer without. This is just really helpful when you're dealing, trying to get closer and utilizing your torpedoes. After this, for a 13-point build, I'd recommend taking Adrenaline Rush. As you lose hit points, as you typically will in any tier, your torpedoes will be loading faster, your main battery will be reloading faster, right? So I've had my torpedoes just with Adrenaline Rush alone down to like 9 in, I think it's like 8.9 seconds or something like that, just from Adrenaline Rush. Your main battery will drop down from like 3.3 to 3.2, 3.1, 3 as an example. So it's nice to take that, makes you a little bit more deadly as you lose your hit points. And then after that, I've taken the main battery and AA Specialist, which helps reduce the main battery reload time. So if I remember correctly, I think it was like a 3.5 second reload time before this. I could be wrong. It might have been just a 3.4. But it gets your reload time down faster. And yes, you get the buff for the AA damage, but you're really going for the main battery here. Now at this point, there's a few different ways that you can go. So I actually have a slightly different build on NA. I'll talk about that. But here on EU, this is probably what I'm going to be looking to do. I'm actually going to look at taking Fill the Tubes because of just being able to reduce the reload time of the torpedoes down to 9.9. As you have battleships and cruisers are typically just pushing on you, especially the bots, right, that you'll have at tier 2 and randoms, then I'm just able to spit torpedoes out even more faster. And with the Adrenaline Rush, we'll get our reload time down to beneath 8 seconds, roughly, with having the Adrenaline Rush and also the Fill the Tubes. So this is a skill that I want to take here. And then that leaves 2 points remaining. So it's not like this huge thing where maybe you feel like you would need priority target at tier 2. I mean, you're basically going to be shot at whatever's closest to you because you don't have like the cross map shots that you have at mid tier and high tier here in World Warships. So I think that skill's a bit redundant if I'm being honest. Right now I'm leaning towards like Swift Fish just because we go from 54 knots to 57 knots. So my torps are getting faster, reaching the targets faster and making it a little more difficult in terms of the reaction time, reducing it that a human would have and avoiding it. Otherwise, I just don't really feel like there's any other 2-pointer skills here really worth taking when we're looking at the others, because you're not HE farming with Smith. That would be weird. Granted, if the 18-second reload time really bothers you on Smith, then you could take Grease the Gears, 15.7 seconds. Awesome. That leaves you another point. So then maybe you're like, well, I want to increase my chances of flooding. And it's kind of pointless to take Incoming Fire Alert because anything beyond 4.5 kilometers shooting at you, that's basically going to be, most ships are going to be like 6, 7, 8, 10 kilometers away from shooting at you. So it's not really a huge reaction time. You could consider Consumable Specialist, but that's not really where the ship's strength lies. I mean, when you're shooting out so many torpedoes, then like, yeah, I'll take an increased flooding chance. So you could do that if the 18-second traverse is really bothering you. Now keep in mind, I have this commander trained for Des Moines. I don't think I have a higher tier other American tech tree destroyer yet. So it could be that, you know, you're using a higher point commander from one of your other ships and putting it on Smith because Smith's a premium, so you can move commanders on and off Smith without it costing you, right? Because she's a premium. So keep in mind of another build that you might have that you'd be running here. So this would be my first recommendation. If I'm just being honest, it's a lot of fun. Some commanders will be really bothered and perhaps by her lack of main battery firing range. Again, it's low tier. So on NA, as an example, I'm actually I've been using my Force Sherman, I think, build here on Smith. And I don't think I would necessarily want to, But I've been taking the main battery in A Expert, basically improving my main battery firing range by plus 20%. So then I get up to, 7.9 kilometers in terms of the range I'm effectively able to reach out, which makes it easier, right? If you get late in the game and you're dealing with the cruiser and you want to smoke up and he's not getting really close to you, like I had a game the other day where the cruiser is kind of staying far away, and because I didn't have this, I was able to shoot him. But hey, something worth considering here. And then maybe you're looking at doing something like that. And take that off the screen. So that's just one example here to have as well in the game. Otherwise, I don't really think it's worth, as I mentioned, taking Superintendent earlier, because you won't get long enough through the game to utilize a fourth smoke screen or a fourth engine boost, right? So you really want to... it'll be a waste of 3-point skills, if I'm being fully honest. And I think I have, again, this skill on my for Sherman in A when I use that commander here for Smith, but I digress. I really don't think it's valuable to run here on Smith. So I'm going to go and close the video out now. My first recommendation for Smith, this is what I'm looking to do. This is what I'm going to do here. Otherwise, if the 18-second traverse time really bothers you, you want to get down 15.7 seconds, you could do this. Beyond that, if you want to be able to get the range out a little bit more, then of course you can certainly do this. You could have fun with Fearless Brawler, I suppose, as well, but Smith doesn't have a lot of hit points to trade, so it's kind of like, I don't think I really recommend doing that. So this would be the build I would recommend most on Smith, just because who doesn't want to have faster reloading torpedoes? Because that's kind of one of her strengths, and that's where you get her damage. The most damage you're ever going to do with Smith at tier 2 is always going to be first and foremost from the torpedoes, not the main battery guns, just because of how the low tier plays. So with that being said, I think we'll go ahead and cap the video on the head now. So if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. And until next time, take care.